Welcome back on Pascal's China Lens, the weekly answer I'm giving on any question you may have on China's innovation, disruptions, or breaking news, anything on your mind. I'll answer it once every week, one question. Welcome. So, the question of this week is, did China fake its numbers related to COVID-19, mortality rate, and infections? It's not typically a question on innovation or technology, but I'm going to do my best to answer it anyway and give you my perspective. Because in March, April, many people asked this question because they wanted to know, looking at the numbers of Europe, the West, America, it looked like China completely faked its numbers like we are used to from China in the past. Now, I think this time we really have to look at the context. I think China truly took measures that very few countries took to contain the virus as soon as they were aware of the dangers. And so I believe that actually those numbers could reflect reality. Why? Because they're very similar to some numbers from other countries that actually took the same strong measures that China did. Now, on the other hand, how do you calculate these numbers is another question to be asked. Because if you look at Belgium, for example, we've even been counting at one point deaths or mortality rates of people that were suspected to have COVID-19, and we didn't really know because we didn't do the testing. So every country counts differently. And I'm not saying that China counts completely fake, but I do believe they may have not counted many deaths and many infections because they were the first affected and didn't know about it and probably categorized it under maybe some other lung disease or something that wasn't COVID-19. So yes, they maybe underestimated the real number. On the other hand, there was a lot of news coming from everywhere in the world, like with the urns in Wuhan, when people were trying to gather the remains of their loved ones after COVID-19 lockdown, and suddenly lots of urns were there, lots of people turned up, and then also the cell phone subscriptions of China Telecom and China Mobile just went down, and so these people must have been dead, so these are not accounted for. I believe most of these news flashes were actually fake news. And I'm not going to go into detail, but for me it has a lot to do with the emotions that they wanted to give us. Reality is that all of these urns did not take into account, or the numbers that they counted did not take into account, all of the normal deaths outside of COVID-19. And the subscriptions is also something that is typical in a crisis, that people actually cancel their second cell phone subscription. And Chinese, most of them have 2 cell phones. So there might be some truth in it, but to claim that suddenly China was faking the numbers completely because of that, I think that's going a little bit too far. Now, if you look in the past, just 10, 15 years ago, what you do see is that China typically was raising the numbers to make everything look better. It was in the GDP, it was in the statistics everywhere. I came from the event industry myself for the last 7 years in China, and I can tell you every time we did an event, the organizer claimed there was 2 times more people than the actual people showing up. It's a little bit like when there's a demonstration in Brussels. The organizers and the police also have very different numbers. So that was kind of the normal of China, to just increase the numbers. My experiences, it usually was double. But what's different from COVID-19, I feel, is that most of the governments, Beijing, really told all the officials everywhere in the country to be very vigilant and not to fake the numbers. If they would be at a personal risk for their political career. And so, knowing this, I don't think many people, many mayors of cities dared to actually fake or blow up these numbers, because they could actually have to resign or lose their jobs. So I think people were very careful. So are these numbers real? Are they not real? It's really hard to say, but I think they're much closer to reality than we think. So if I would have to take a guess, I would say increase them with 50%, it's probably be closer to the reality. But that does not mean that China is completely faking its numbers. And so yes, we should be vigilant, we should be careful on these numbers, but we shouldn't think it's like times 10. I don't believe that. I don't know what you believe. Let me know. So this was the answer of this week. I hope you liked it. If you did, you're always welcome to send me any questions you have on China. I'll be answering them in the weeks coming. So if you liked it and enjoyed this episode, do please tune in, and next week I'll give you another answer to another weekly question on Pascal's China lens.